Thanks for watching. Hey guys, here's everything you'll need to make up your jig for cutting frets. So I bought a StuMac fret slotting ruler. I bought the fender length 25.5 inch. Now this ruler measures roughly 24 inches long. So you're going to need to find a piece of plywood that is 3/8 thick by roughly 48 inches long. It can be a little bit shorter, that doesn't really matter. It can be shorter by 4, 5, 6 inches. That doesn't really make a difference. You're also going to need two guide rails that measure 3.5 inches by the same length as your board. Now my board doesn't measure exactly 48 inches because this is what I had as scraps. That really doesn't matter. As long as you have a nice long length, it should still work fine. Now, StuMac, they give you this really tiny locating pin. And the way this works is this little pin here will slot into the little notches there. So what we're going to do is we're going to measure the center of the length of the board. So if you buy a 48-inch piece of plywood, you're going to locate your pin at 24 inches. And you're going to drill it right against the edge here. As you can see, I've marked it. So basically your pin will be touching the guide here. I've clamped this temporarily in place. That way I can drill into my mark here in the center. So let's start by doing that. So as you can see right now, I've located the pin flush with the top of the ruler here. So if I pull this ruler away, the pin is basically flush with the top of the ruler. You don't want this pin to extend past, because what's going to happen is we're gluing with some double-sided tape the fretboard onto the steel ruler. So you don't want this pin to hit the bottom of the fretboard. Okay, so the next step is to clamp your guide piece, which is the top piece, to the base and then screw it in. So as you screw in these guides, make sure that the metal ruler can slide easily between the two guides. Okay, so here you can see I've taken out my router with a rounder bit. And the reason is I want to create a channel in the center that goes from one end here all the way to the other. And that's just basically to help you lift the ruler and the fretboard out of the slot, because it's kind of hard to grab onto. So I marked a center location here, and what we're going to do is we're basically going to line up the bit with the center here just by hand. Doesn't need to be extremely precise. So now I'm centered, and what we're going to do is we're just going to take basically a straight edge. Doesn't matter as long as it's straight. And we're going to butt it up against the router here and clamp it in place temporarily with a good strong clamp, and do the same at the other end, and we're ready to route out the channel. Okay, as you can see, I've got my two guides screwed in place. Next step is to draw a line slightly to the right side of the locating pin. Maybe a 1/16 of an inch should suffice. And what I did is I drew a line from here 1.5 inches out from there to there. And what we're going to do next is I've cut out a block 3.5 inches by 3.5 inches. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a square line it up to this line. So we're going to take our square, butt it up to that line, and we're going to glue a block flush against this edge of the square. Okay, so next step, we're going to take our square and we're going to butt it up against this square. Make sure it's touching. And then we're going to just basically slide the other piece up against the square here and glue it in place. Okay, we're at the last step, so I want to congratulate you if you made it this far. So the last step is basically we're going to take the saw, we're going to butt it up against the two little blocks that we glued into place, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to put our saw right up against those two blocks, and we're going to glue in our little blocks flush up against the edge of the saw here. We're going to glue one here, and we're going to glue one there. Wait till it dries and then put a couple screws, and that's basically it. That's the jig done, and I'll show you how it works once I'm done building it. Okay, so as you can see, I've put my guide and I've lined up the pin with the first notch for the fretboard. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my fretboard blank, and I'm going to line it up to about 1/4 inch from the end, and I'm going to make sure that this edge is pressed up all the way to the end over there, so that the two edges meet. And then I'm just going to push down, and the double-sided tape will do its job. So that's pressed down, and I'll change camera angles so you can see the cut. It's very simple. Okay, so I've set the depth basically to how deep I want it to be, which is roughly 3/16 of an inch, maybe a little less than that. And you're basically going to make sure that your saw is flat, and start the blade before going into the wood, and just push. And that's your first cut. Now, here's where the finger recess comes in, as I was explaining earlier. So here I screwed up my explanation when I was recording the video. So basically what I'm saying here is you put your finger in the recess to help you lift up the metal ruler. That way you can slide it to the right side to align it up with the next pin. So that's the fretboard all done, and it took me roughly a little less than 10 minutes to cut all of it. Works great. It's very accurate, and it's quick and repeatable. That's the kind of hard to see, but that's the depth of the slots. So very consistent. If you're wondering about the blade, I bought it on Amazon, and I'll show the link in the description.